Hello, listeners.
Welcome to Procure. Today we have a very exciting topic that we're going to talk about. Ever fighting siblings, procurement and finance. I'm sure all of you have heard this many a times where we are constantly fighting with our finance team over either the terms or suppliers not getting paid or how we realize savings on our books. So we're always fighting with them, but it would be interesting to see how those problems are solved or how we can approach that situation. This topic is particularly of interest to me because I have both finance and procurement background and I understand what each side is saying, and somewhere it's actually helped me in managing my relationship with the finance team. But enough about me. Let's see how Nishish has been coping with it. So Nishish, can you tell us a bit about how you have managed procurement and finance relation in the organizations that you worked with? What were some of the challenges, and how did you go about it? How did you make sure that that relationship was working, and you were not constantly fighting with, or your team was not fighting with finance?
Yeah, so I think in my experience, it's very interesting that yes, we are talking about it. I've always seen procurement and finance having very strained relationships, at least in my experience, and that primarily comes from the fact that rather than looking at each other as allies, typically the departments will look at each other as not being the allies. Now, what happened, and the story which I wanted to share is again from my experience, where in procurement we collaborated, or at least we tried to collaborate with finance. And one thing which we realized was that when we talk about savings, so procurement department was putting in a lot of efforts, we were getting in the savings, but that was not something which was resonating with the management, the senior leadership. But just by working together with finance, we could convert these things into a language which resonates with the management. So just to keep it or make it more specific, we got in cost reductions, which primarily in procurement we call savings. But when we were discussing with our finance colleagues, they said this is impacting the profitability in a good way, or at times EBIT, which is earning before interest and tax. So, and when we started to use these terms and articulate the procurement efforts in these terms, suddenly procurement had all the attention from the management, and the brand and the perception towards procurement just got elevated.
But did that really help you? So what would really interest me is to understand, how did you get finance on board? Because typically when you have savings, right? Understanding of savings or the terminology is used is not normally the same as what finance projects on their books. And this is a common problem I face all the time, where we say this is the savings, but finance doesn't show the same value on their books. And this is where, when we go to management, we don't look aligned and we're always fighting over it. So tell us a bit about that, and how you incorporated that in your role or in your experience with finance.
Yeah, so this is an interesting bit. Primarily, what we are talking about is cost mitigation. Now, that's something where the procurement team puts in a lot of effort. Imagine in an inflationary market, which is all around us, the effort goes in mitigating the cost increases, which may come our way, but it doesn't reflect in the books, right? And one thing which did happen, or, or some of the listeners can do, is to try involving finance early in the process. And what they will find out is that once they are able to articulate the risks properly, finance can build the narrative in the right way. They can also communicate the anticipated increases to the commercial team, and they can take the pricing actions, which makes sure that the revenue is safeguarded, the profitability is safeguarded, and of course, the procurement has to work with full intent to mitigate these increases. At the end of the day, it all leads to safeguarding of the profitability for the organization. And again, another example of how finance and procurement can come together and show the value to the senior leadership.
Okay, so it's fair to say that at initial stages, you should definitely align on the terminology, the language that the two functions are using, because I think that adds a lot of value and takes away a lot of problem which we have at the end of the year. So if we're very clear from the beginning of the year that this is how we are going to calculate costs, or this is how we're going to calculate the savings, then that is something which both the functions should uh, use and apply throughout the year and at the end of the year. So that's an interesting point. And I think also um, it's important for procurement to look beyond cost savings. uh, being like I said, being from both finance and procurement, I understand what finance would look for. If we start, instead of talking about payment terms, if we start talking about the impact on working capital, I think that's a major shift. This is where you will have attention from your finance colleagues, and you can work with them to understand what are their problems as a finance function. It's very good to understand, similar to any stakeholder, right? Because when we sit with stakeholders, we understand what are their challenges, what are their problems. So similarly, if you can speak with finance and understand what they are struggling with,
So
it
true.
really helps that you work with them and incorporate that into how you're working. We need to go beyond just hard savings or cost avoidance. We need to look at profitability. We need to look at how we're impacting the bottom line, like you said. So I think keeping some of these things in mind could be very, very crucial to how you build a relationship with finance.
Yeah. And I just want to add that is not only for the benefit of procurement,
Mm,
it's also to the benefit of finance.
mm,
And to build on it, one of the experience has been
mm,
that when faced with inflationary pressure or
mm,
expecting cost increases,
mm.
if finance can get an understanding of what's coming our way, they will be able to budget and prepare budgets in a much more effective way,
Mm,
which supports their credibility and
mm.
and how the management looks at finance. So it's not only to the benefit of procurement, both the teams, both the departments have to gain from each other. So it's a very symbiotic relationship out there.
Absolutely. And in today's time, I think both procurement and finance play such crucial roles, right? Because finance protects or manages the company's finances, while procurement ensures that we're keeping the organization running, and we have a great impact on profitability. So I think both functions play a very, very important role. And if the two can work together, I think we could do really wonders, isn't
I
it?
fully agree. Fully agree.
So it would be good for both to benefit from each other. Procurement can obviously collaborate and bring a lot of information on the table for finance to utilize when it comes to budgeting, like you said. And I think that alignment on the terms is going to be beautiful, because then we are both speaking the same language. When we go to the CEO of the company, we're both presenting the same information, and we don't have to sit and fight over anything in that regard or at that platform. So I think that would be my takeaway, that, work with your finance. Don't look at them as somebody who's just going to release payments to your suppliers. But if they're not releasing payments to your suppliers, try and understand what is the issue. Try and address the underlying problem, right? And I think that is where it's very important and core. We need to address the right problem, find the right solution at the right ground, so we don't have any superficial issues later.
Yeah. And if I have to sum up, then I would say that both the departments need to empathize with each other, understand the challenges of each other, and also procurement needs to involve finance early in the process.
Mm.
If the two teams are able to collaborate successfully, then nobody can stop the company from succeeding. So that would be the 2 cents from my side.
And I think going to profit generation as well is an important take, which is upcoming, right? So when we talk about value generation from procurement, I don't think so. If we only talk about cost savings, that does justice to the work that we do, right? We do so much more. We look at risk mitigation. We look at how can we innovate with vendors to bring new products. How can we help business in that regard? So I think having that big picture of how procurement will be value generating, how it's going to really have the impact not just on bottom line but on top line. This is where, when we hold hands with procurement and finance together, we are so much better successful than doing it alone or individually.
You have summarized it perfectly. with you.
All right, great. So we hope you enjoyed listening to us today, and you got some good takeaways from it. If you would like to discuss this further, or would like to share any particular problem with us, leave a feedback for us, and we will be happy to get in touch with you and have a further conversation with you. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a feedback for us. Have a good day.
Bye bye.